Businesses learn hard lessons when not prepared for disaster. New York APU. When Hurricane Irma hit Puerto Rico in September 2017, Carlos Melendez couldn't contact the staffers or customers of his San Juan-based technology firm, Wovenware. Melendez learned a lesson that would help his business during the next storm, that disaster preparedness includes being able to communicate with people when the emergency is over. He quickly signed the Small businesses have already contended this summer with earthquakes in Southern California and Hurricane Barry in the Gulf Coast and Midwest, and the most intense portions of the Atlantic hurricane and western wildfire seasons are still ahead. But many owners don't. Melendez also learned lessons from Hurricane Maria. His company had. Sam Beasley learned businesses don't have to suffer catastrophic damage to be affected. Beasley owns Prevent. I don't. Moreover, his income plunged. One office was. Some companies change their entire operations in response to a disaster. When Hurricane McMillan says he could have used technology available before the storm, scanning paper records and turning them into electronic documents, but hadn't done so. The lesson he learned: when Hurricane Harvey dumped more than 50 inches of rain in parts of the Gulf Coast in August 2017, Stuart Gus Houston-based law firm lost power for nearly a week, knocking out its phone system that would have handled hundreds of calls from prospective clients. Gus and his fellow. After the crisis ended, the firm developed a more concrete disaster operation and recovery plan. 1. The firm also transitioned from technology that was based in its office. The phones had been run by an on-site server to one that uses the internet and therefore can be accessed from anywhere. And as the firm earlier this year, the firm's new systems got a test run, when a freak winter storm in February made it impossible to get to the office. Gus and his staff were most. Follow Joyce Rosenberg at her work can be search for location/city.
Raindrop, drop top, smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.